It's time for Physician Family Finances, the show where physician moms and dads like you can get the answers and encouragement you need to turn a good earned income into great life outcomes for tomorrow and today.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Kyle Hoelzle, certified financial planner and retirement investing specialist.
Kyle, you're back.
I'm back.
All right, back. Hey, you and I love talking about our kids. I want to know what's going on with your kids this summer.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know, we've just kind of been trying to do it all, fit it in, I think, like a lot of families. But we went and saw some family out of town. We had a birthday party with a slip and slide that we put in on the side of our house.
Nice.
It's 120 feet. It really gets cooking. It was a lot of fun, and they've been watching some TV. They've been playing a little video games.
Yep.
We have soccer practice kind of all year, off and on. So we've had some soccer stuff. That's getting ready to ramp up here for the end of summer, fall. So yeah, just having a real good summer. How about you guys?
It's been good. By the way, speaking of playing the little video games and all that, I've noticed every time I meet with another parent, we sort of slowly are like, so does your child play video games too? It's like a shameful thing. They're like, yes. In fact, I was at lunch with a pediatrician, one of our, the families we serve, a couple weeks ago. And I said something about that. I wanted to know, like, hey, from a pediatrician, how much iPad time is like reasonable. And she just kind of rolled her eyes. She's like, iPads, not that great, but like, my kids probably watch just as much TV as yours. I'm like, okay, because we just feel so guilty, it's a pediatrician. It's like, okay, it came from a pediatrician. We're okay. But yeah, no, I have a really cool story from actually just last weekend. My boys, so 5 and 7, they are very into making money because I have made it so. And so, they're always wanting to like earn $20 in a day. And I'm like, no. I'm like, your labor is not worth $20. You can't work long enough to earn $20, or I haven't seen it yet. So I'm like, you'd have to work for 3 or 4 hours. They're like, my 7-year-old, 4 hours, it's $5 an hour. He's already doing the math. I'm like, yeah, that's probably what your labor's worth. You get distracted. And I said, if you want to make more money than that, you have to figure out a way to do something other than just like washing windows, because it just take too long. And he's been begging to do a lemonade stand. He wants to do it in our driveway. And I'm like, you're not going to make any money. So I want to let him do it. I want to let him fail at it, basically. But I just said, Mateo, think about how many people walk by our driveway. What is it like? You're going to sit out there an hour, maybe two people are going to walk by. And I said, why don't we, do something else? You can work and then I was like, this is my perfect opportunity. So I said, okay, we're not doing lemonade. When's the last time you wanted a lemonade? Okay, nobody wants lemonade. What do you think you want? And he's like, ice cream. I'm like, of course you want ice. Everybody wants ice cream. I said, so you have to buy the ice cream, okay, with your own money, because I'm not gonna buy it for you. And what is all the other stuff we need? We need ice. Okay, well, we need a cooler. And I was like, and where are we gonna go where there's a bunch of kids? And he's like, the park. He knows this park that has 1 million kids at it. It's like, okay, we're doing this thing. So we made a big sign. I drew it. We went to the cheapest store in town. It's like grocery outlet. I'm like, you got to keep your costs down, dude. And so we went to the cheapest store, bought probably 30 ice creams, like popsicles mostly. And they were like 50 cents each. We're selling them for $1. But the ice creams that he wanted to buy were $1 each. And I'm like, ooh, dude, you're going to have to sell these for $2 at least, maybe $3, because you got to buy the ice too. So he buys everything. We put it in the cooler, put out the sign, go to this really busy park. And him and his 5-year-old brother are standing there in the hot sun. And they look at me and they're like, what if 2 minutes in, nobody's come up to their stand. I said, well, what if we don't make our money back? And I guess you don't make your money back then. And I was terrified they were going to lose like $20. It was $20 for everything, their own money. And then a flurry of kids started coming up. Mostly parents of kids that wanted to support. And one kid slaps down $10 and grabs a bunch of popsicles and stuff. And Mateo's like fighting this random kid off of the cash drawer. Like he's trying to get into the and but in 45 minutes they sold out.
Nice. Good for them.
Yeah. So
Good
with
for them.
everything included, they each made $9. And I told my wife, good thing they didn't. I didn't charge them for fuel, because I think they would have made zero if I did.
Oh,
But yeah,
nice.
so that's what we're doing this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Nice.
As soon as I saw him fighting him off the cash drawer, I thought about you with your kids and jujitsu. I'm like, be nice in this moment. he doesn't have
Boundary
that dog
setting.
in him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all can use boundary setting skills, right? That's a
Yeah,
good one.
exactly.
That's a good boundary to set. Stay out of my cash drawer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have some questions from our clients, from listeners, and the first one is actually aimed at kids, but these are all going to be investment related. So some of them pretty basic, but I thought you'd be the perfect person to ask. So first question is, what is an UTMA or minor Roth IRA, and should I open one?
Yeah. So the UTMA and the minor Roth. It's a good question. Should you open one? I think that's a great question to start with when thinking about these types of accounts. I think when deciding if it's a good fit for you, there's a few things to consider. One is it's like the oxygen mask on the airplane. It's like you should take care of yourself before you start taking care of the person sitting next to you, even if that's your child. So I think being able to identify whether you have the cash flow or the means to be able to fund one is super important. So make sure your other goals are on track. Are you saving up for retirement? Are you saving for college or any other goals you have first? Then with extra money, then I would consider something like an UTMA for a child, which kind of leads into the next factor is like, do you have a goal in mind for this account? For this UTMA or this minor Roth? I think the minor Roth's obvious, right? It's for retirement, right? It's a Roth IRA for your child in the hopes that they keep that money in that Roth IRA vehicle until they retire and start saving really early for retirement.
Yeah.
So I think that goal is kind of pretty obvious. But the UTMA is not so obvious. That's kind of just it's a taxable investment account for a child, basically. The uniform transfer to minors. It's just a way for an adult to manage taxable assets for a child until they've reached adulthood. But oftentimes that's so general that it's like, what's the goal for that? Is it
Right.
for buying a home? Is it for, paying for a wedding? Is there a goal in mind? I think that's important to know, like what you're even saving for.
Yeah, let me jump in there. So this is what I
Yeah.
usually hear, okay?
Okay.
Because I think everybody, well, not everybody, many people have this aspiration to just do something for their children, and they haven't defined it. So this is a really good jumping off point, because anytime I get into like, well, what's it for? So a uniform transfers to minors account, essentially, just real quick, you parents put the money in and they control it until your child's an adult, and then it's theirs. It's just their account.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So
As soon
if
as
you
they
don't
reach
have
adulthood, yeah, it's theirs.
so
Yeah.
if you think you have a goal for this, like I want it to be for a house when they're 30, they don't have to use it for a house, right? So you got to be really careful with this goal. But what I have heard most parents say, this is not all, but most of them will say, I want to teach my children about investing. Do you think this account is the best to teach them about investing?
Well, I think this account is a good vehicle for that. Yeah. I think anytime this money is for the benefit of your child, that your child should have a stake in that. And at the very least, the stake should be learning about it, being involved in the decision making, or at least being, roped in, not necessarily making the decisions, but like being a part of that decision making process, or at least explain to them why we're doing this or doing that. Showing them the statements when they come in would be an example of like, hey, look, this is that account that our family's saving into for you. Our hopes is that you use it for this. This is how to be responsible with money, kind of be able to have the opportunity to have a real world conversation about that. I think that'd be a lost opportunity if you didn't.
Right. Yeah. And then switching over to the minor Roth account, I think that one I like more, I think, than the UTMA, because they have to earn the money. Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah,
on it. Yeah.
minor Roth.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
which gives them a real stake in the outcome, but that means they got to have an income, so
Right.
it's hard. You got to wait a long time, 16, 17, 18 years old. So
Hmm.
it's interesting. So
Hmm.
what's a good case for, or I guess, what do you see most often? I think there's a Fidelity account, right, where you can put money in as a minor, or for a minor that doesn't have kiddie tax rules for the UTMA. Maybe I'm getting that
Hmm.
wrong. Maybe it's just a checking account. Um,
Yeah, I'm not
so
certain on that.
can
I
you
think,
talk about kiddie tax rules real quick with the UTMA? Because this is why, again, I don't love them.
yeah. There's an exemption, basically because it's for a minor, so they don't tax you on the first amount of income that you receive from the portfolio or from the assets. Income being like bond interest or dividends from stocks.
So
Um,
if you have a bunch of cash in an UTMA uniform, minor account, if you have a bunch of cash in there and it's producing, or I should say, investments in there, and they're producing an income, the first little bit of
mhm.
income essentially is untaxed,
Right. Yeah,
right?
it's zero tax on that first bit. Exactly.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
and then
go ahead.
mhm. Yeah, then the next amount of income above that is taxed at the parent's tax rate. Because the parent's
Right.
claiming the child. So.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I think I looked it up. Uh, I think it's $2,600 is the amount of income it can, receive tax free in an UTMA. And so you have to be real careful with how much you put in there, right? And if you put too
Mhm.
much money in there, it's going to produce more income than is desirable, because then it's taxed at a doctor's income tax rate,
Mhm.
right? So be careful. So a lot of times you look at these accounts, and if you don't have a goal in mind, I like that. If you don't have a goal in mind, um, it's just kind of floating out there for nothing. It doesn't accomplish anything. Otherwise, you can just
Mhm.
give your child some money when they need something. If that's the goal, is to have money for a house, well, you can gift them money for a house at some point. But if you want to teach them about money, you don't have to do it with a lot. And you could use an UTMA account with a small amount to teach them about investing. Because
Mhm.
$10,000 in an UTMA isn't going to produce $2,600 a year in income,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, in the UTMA, it's an irrevocable gift. When you gift that money, it you can't take it back out. So we all hope that our children will use that money for something responsible.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you know, every child is their own individual, and they're going to make their own decisions. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, yeah. Again, what to kind of circle back what you said, the minor Roth IRA, I think, is my favorite, definitely, as well, because again, more skin in the game by having an earned child has to have an earned income. But to take it a step further, uh, have some of that earned income that child has in their bank account, and have them turn around and put that into the minor Roth themselves. You
Mm-hmm.
know, have them actually have a real money skin in the game, and meanwhile educate them about tax-free growth and how the purpose of this money,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of an advantage this gives you. Really stress the advantage, of like, wow, keeping this money in till I retire is a huge advantage. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Avoid taking this money out at all costs in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it's my favorite as well.
Yeah. It is a
But
big leg up if you get a reasonable amount in there.
I think one of the advantages of the UTMA is you can start it earlier.
Yeah.
Essentially, as soon as you have a social security number, you can start it earlier. My grandma actually started me a UTMA when I was born, and back in '85, she put like 5 grand in, and
Mm-hmm.
that money was priceless for me when I was starting my family.
Yeah.
So there, and it never grew to the point where I think it was an issue with the kiddie tax. I'm not talking about, really kiddie tax is there just to avoid you from dumping a bunch of money in your child's name,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
trying to pay lower taxes. And so I think it's reasonable for like a jumping off amount for a child. I think it's a reasonable vehicle for that. But again, I think make sure you go in knowing your values around money, making sure you educate your children about it, and making sure you have an idea in mind and a goal in mind for this money, when you go
Yeah.
into it.
Be
Because
on track for
once it goes
college.
in, it's in. Yeah,
Yeah. On track for college, on track for retirement, and then you can put a little bit in there.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question is, why is it important to have my CPA fill out an IRS Form 8606 every year? You make a traditional IRA contribution, regardless if it is deducted or not. So, question is about 8606 forms. Chelsea and I get, the new families, every week that are coming in, and we ask them for this form, and I am kind of surprised how often they simply don't have one. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
what's the deal with 8606? So, first of all, what is it, and why is it important?
That's actually been my same experience too, talking with clients. It's hit or miss finding the 8606. So, yeah, it's an IRS tax form that you file that tracks your after-tax traditional IRA contributions. So, this would be a situation where you make a traditional IRA contribution, but you earn too much to deduct it. So, you're effectively making that traditional IRA contribution after tax because there's no
Mm-hmm.
deduction and you're using money that you've already paid taxes on when you got paid. And so uh, that's the use of that form is just to track that, and it tracks it for your lifetime. So it reports the current year's traditional IRA after-tax contribution, non-deductible contribution for the current year, and it has a running total of your lifetime if it's been, properly reported every year that you've made those after-tax non-deductible IRA contributions. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what it is. It's a tracking tool for that after-tax IRA stuff, IRA contributions.
Right.
But there's a reason why you track that, of course. You're not
Mm-hmm.
just tracking it just to track it.
So,
So
just to be clear, you said you want to track these non-deductible contributions, and I thought you were going to say it. The non-deductible contributions are what you would eventually roll to your Roth, right?
yeah.
So,
So there's a slang term to total up that lifetime after-tax IRA contribution total of your lifetime. In the industry, we call that basis.
mm-hmm.
That's the term for that. That's that total there. And so, yeah, when you're thinking about converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, especially for the first time, you really want to consider how much basis do I have, i.e., how much is my total after-tax IRA contributions, and how much is not basis, how much is what we call above basis,
Mm-hmm.
which would be like your rollover dollars, your deducted IRA
Yeah,
contributions. So
maybe
you
you're
did
in
deduct and took
residency
your
and you
core
didn't
tax.
make so much money, and you made a contribution to your traditional IRA and you did deduct it, right?
Exactly.
And now, if you don't have that 8606, you don't know how much was made that you deducted and how much of contributions are made that were not deducted. And if you start rolling things over, like you get to Kyle and he's like rolls over everything, you're going to pay taxes on whatever you deducted because you don't have a basis for that. Your basis is zero. And then alternatively, if you find out you have a small little, some people come in, they say, uh, I did deduct some of this, and you find out it was $1,000. You're like, well, this is no big deal. You pay the tax on the $1,000. Other times they come and they have $50,000 in a traditional IRA. They don't know, and this could create a huge bill if we just roll it over, and you don't know how much was basis and how much wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's important both ways. Like either either you convert, like for example, say you have basis in your IRA and you haven't been tracking it, and so you don't know it's there, right? This is the good thing about basis is that you don't get taxed twice. So this basis, these after-tax contributions, is already tax contribution traditional IRA. If you had just basis in your traditional IRA and you converted it to your Roth, you wouldn't pay any taxes on that conversion because it was all made with after-tax contributions. That's assuming that all you had was basis in all your IRAs, your simple,
Mm-hmm.
your SEP, your traditional IRAs. Just all you have was basis. You convert it, you pay zero tax on that. That's kind of like your baseline, right? So let's say that's good, right? Because it converts into the Roth. You don't pay any additional taxes on it, all gross tax free. Now, let's say that you had that basis, but and there's some money above basis. Maybe it's kind of mixed, and
Mm-hmm.
you weren't tracking that basis at all. And then you just go, well, I don't know what my basis is. I can't find it. I can't track it. So I'm going to assume that there's no basis there. I'm going to roll that into my 401k or my 403b to empty my IRA out
Mm-hmm.
to set up a blank, empty backdoor Roth so that now I can fund after tax and convert. But if you did have basis there and you weren't tracking it and you just rolled that into your IRA, then you just lost that basis that could have been
Yeah.
converted to the Roth. It's now in your 401k, and you coded it as all before tax.
Yeah.
So now when you withdraw from your 401k, that money that you'd already paid taxes on is going to get taxed again
Oh gosh.
when you take the money out. You see what I mean? Because you
Yeah.
funded after tax your traditional IRA, didn't record the basis on the 8606, reverse rolled that into a 401k, assuming there was no basis, but you already paid taxes on that. And then you take it out later and pay taxes on it again. So that to me is the worst scenario that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that undoubtedly happens all the time.
Yeah.
Because I've met clients where we've tried super hard to build the old basis using old historical statements, IRAs that have been transferred and closed out, trying to get a hold of these old historical statements and just not getting the data and just not being able to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. It's rare. It does happen though. It happens.
I have.
And sometimes we identify some basis and not all the basis, and we just stick with what we know.
Yeah.
So yeah, 8606 super important. And we didn't really even talk about why does it get missed a lot?
Yeah.
Why is this not missed, or why is this missed? Well, there's two reasons. One, it's a combination of two things. One is that tax form 5498 that comes out that shows that you made an IRA contribution for the year. It doesn't come out until like July or something later in the year. So everyone's already filed their taxes, and so they have to verbally report their IRA contribution either to their CPA, or they have to put it in the tax software themselves and report it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For that to even get on the radar, because the 5498 comes way later in the year. And then by the time you give it to your CPA, everyone's already done with their tax. Like it's irrelevant at that point. No one considers it. Gets missed a lot. The second thing is that a lot of tax preparers, they try to save you money, and get you a good tax bill and try to get the best tax bill they can get you. And when you do a non-deductible IRA contribution, there's no tax savings to be had there. And so a lot of, and tax preparers get really busy. And so they don't understand quite the backdoor Roth strategy, or maybe like in the long, bigger picture, the big planning picture, and so oftentimes it just doesn't get reported. Like clients go to their CPA they've been using for years and years and years, and there's no 8606, but they've been making non-deductible IRA contributions.
Yeah.
So it gets missed. And that 5498, meanwhile, comes out way too late. And there's just a disconnect.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I see that quite often.
No, so I'll add something on top of that. It's just uncommon. It's uncommon to do backdoor Roth IRAs. I know it's really common in the physician's world. You assume that, like, out of all of your CPAs or your tax professionals' clients, what do they have? A handful of doctors? But they have to have hundreds of clients. So they have hundreds and hundreds of clients, and you might be the only one doing this. So, I mean, you really have to ask. You have to make sure they know this needs to be done. Or work with a CPA that actually specializes and works with doctors.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you'd have to work with high earners who are aware of this backdoor Roth strategy, which
savers.
Oftentimes involves an advisor. So, so you kind of be high earners with an advisor, and this would be a small percent of the population.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. Here's another question. It's kind of a planning question, so I don't know which one of us will answer this. If I work for two employers and I'm eligible for both retirement plans, which one should I fund, and what factors should I consider?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get this one a lot.
Okay, I'll let you take a first stab at it, and then I will fill in the blanks.
Okay. Yeah. From strictly like a numbers or a money side of things, I think match is most important. Which employer offers the best match? It's basically part of your compensation at that point when you're making contributions and getting your max match. You don't want to leave any money on the table, so definitely get your max match. And then if say matches are equal, or there's no match situation at all, then I would start thinking about costs and investments. What is the administrative fees for each plan? What are the investments available? Are they expensive? Do they have good performance, bad performance?
Yeah, I was just looking at, so when we write, our first, we write a one-time plan when new families come to us, and we start with a plan. And it's always interesting when they see side by side each, maybe each spouse's plans next to each other. And even more interesting is when they have, maybe one of them has 2 jobs, and now you got 3 next to each other. And a lot of times it will be like, oh, it's Vanguard funds. But then sometimes it'll be 4 different funds. And they're like, whoa, just yesterday I saw someone had Fidelity, Vanguard, American Funds, and Nuveen Life Cycle Fund. And I was like, this is just, the full slate of like all your options. And there are some winners and losers in there, I guess. And mainly it has to do with fees or being actively managed. So if you like one or more than the other, then and the matches were the same, maybe you would go with the Vanguard one and put more money in there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
What
I wouldn't
else
do it at
is
the
there?
expense of match unless it was really bad.
Yeah, that's true. Most of the time, these
Gotta get
days,
the match.
there are better and worse, but these days, I don't often see, maybe 1 out of 10 times, a really bad target date fund in these accounts, like really bad. I see some that I'm like, oh, I don't love it, but I would not put money in it. Fees are getting lower, but yeah, what else should we consider? So basically, you're saying get your match. It's the obvious one, and and after that, next order of operation is choose the low cost investments that are maybe the best choices. Is there anything else?
Yeah, this is kind of more of a values one, but I do hear clients express this sometimes. But there's a certain like allegiance or a certain longevity of that employer that they like. For example, some people say, but this is my main employer. This is the one I'm planning on being with the longest. This is when I work the most hours at. This is so all things equal considered, no better match. Investments are, like you said, the target date fund world is kind of, you see the same funds everywhere. So kind of like it's all, both large hospital systems with low admin fees on their plans. You're just like, it's a wash, but they're
Yeah.
like, this is the place this is the building I spend most of my time in. And so I want to fund this plan. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I don't plan on working here forever. This is my second job for a while now, type thing. And that makes sense to me, just that
Well,
way you
yeah.
don't have to
Well,
do a rollover later,
yeah,
or
exactly.
something.
That does make sense. I
Yeah.
could think of a couple more. Maybe there's other things to consider within unique cases, but in really obvious cases, you could look at vesting schedules. Because doctors change jobs all the time, and I don't see it all that often, but a couple times a year I see people leave some money on the table when they want to change jobs. So vesting schedules are important.
So I
Here's
have a
what.
funny story about
Yeah,
vesting
tell me.
schedules, man. I have to share it. We were working with a client and we were doing a rollover, and we were showing that it wasn't fully vested, and she was surprised by that. So she went back to ask her HR people about it. She came back to me and she said, I thought I had worked and terminated exactly at the end of the vesting schedule, but it was my vesting schedule plus 1 day, and she didn't work the last day. I
Oh
couldn't believe it.
no.
She said, I thought, she didn't ask that finite question. Is this the day that I'm fully vested? She didn't ask that. She just assumed based off of what it said, 3 years
Oh
of
my
service. So she did
gosh.
exactly on that 365th day, and it was 365 plus 1. So she terminated 1 day early. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. So anyways,
Oh, that's
yeah, know your
so
vesting
annoying.
schedule. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, geez, that puts a pit in my stomach. It's not even my money.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more. I'm thinking of a specific plan that I've written recently. It's not really. This is a little bit not totally related to this question in that, like, which one should you contribute to? But understanding the contribution rates and how they work if you have 2 jobs is really important. Because one, you have a limit on how much can go in each plan. So 23,500 for 2025. You can't contribute from the employee side. Can't contribute more than 23,500. Let's say if you had 2 separate 401ks. But a lot of times there are what they call required contributions. And I saw this. It was probably one of the most complicated required contribution situations I've seen, where a doc in Washington had multiple plans. Like there's 3 plans. There's like a 401a, 401k, 403b, and at least 2 of them had required contributions in them. And when you have required contributions, it doesn't go toward that limit. And so I won't get into any more details, but understanding what's required, understanding what the limit is across all plans, understanding how much you can get from your employer and how much you need to put in to get the max, all super important. And once we got that ironed out, it was a, a large amount of money. It was like, I think it all told something like $50,000 or $60,000 was going into these accounts. And, you know,
Yeah.
just, and she wasn't one of those, you know, doctors that is filling up their 401k with employer contributions, getting up to $70,000 a year. It was just W-2 jobs. But she found 2 jobs that had great benefits, and she just worked them. I mean, worked the contributions in them so that she could get the most. It was huge.
Some of those plans that you and Chelsea write that I see when clients come to work with me to work on account stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I see some of those those types of plans on there, and it's pretty amazing to see the results that you get in those plans with those types of saving rates, plus
Mm-hmm.
all the tax deductions, and you know, it reduces those other contributions that are often
That's right.
required, like a taxable brokerage contribution or even a backdoor Roth. Sometimes not even necessary.
Yeah,
It's kind
that's
of
what
icing on the cake. So
it
it's pretty
is.
amazing some of those matching arrangements
It
and
totally is.
required funding.
They have to save less is the reality. It's more free money, but also they save a ton in taxes if they're, you know, working out how to get, um, especially with these required contributions. It's just all around. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it doesn't really feel different to the people that find it because they don't know how hard it is to put a bunch of money in a taxable account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But whenever they change jobs, I'm like, okay, you got to save more now. Then they kind of think, oh man, that was a good job that I used to have.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, they
yeah,
realize the benefits. Yeah.
two things there. One, you know, you don't want to accidentally save way too much money because it's just too painful. You don't have to. I heard someone say recently, you don't want to be the richest man in the grave. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to save a lot of money, but you don't need to save millions extra on accident because you didn't, you know, realize how much you're getting from work. And then 2 is just you want to make sure you're saving as much as you can on taxes with these required contributions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I do have one more question. I'm going to let you keep it brief. I'll try my best not to jump in because this is right up your alley. But I saw this literally last week, so
Mm-hmm.
I had to ask. What's wrong with having a target date fund in my brokerage account?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw this the other, probably last month. It was a total allocation fund, like a 60/40
Yeah.
stock bond fund, all in one fund to fund. Same concept here for the most part, in that it really comes down to the bond inefficiency. Um, a target date fund sure only has a little bit of bonds when you're young, but that bond allocation is going to grow with time. It's going to get larger as you get closer to retirement. As you need more capital preservation, and so that those bonds are tax inefficient. They're comprised of primarily corporate bonds and treasuries and things that are taxable to you in the year they accrue. That's just that you're in your highest tax earning years right now. When you're saving, you're earning, so you're in your highest tax bracket. So you're basically paying taxes on those bonds in your highest earning years,
Yeah.
paying the max rates on those. And so, really, ideally, what you'd want to use in a taxable brokerage account to offset the tax burden of that is to use tax exempt bonds. A municipal bond fund or something like that buys state bonds
Mm-hmm.
and gets you that federal tax exemption, and meaning you don't pay any income tax on the interest earned on those bonds at a federal level, which is your
Federal
highest
level.
burden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you've told this on the podcast before, but I always think back about that story you have about the Vanguard and the distributions that were made. What happened with the big target date fund when people had in a brokerage account like 3 years ago or 5 years ago?
Are you talking about capital gains distributions or
Yes.
whatever from the mutual fund? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is using a target date fund or a fund of funds, you kind of lack that tax control of when you want to sell your stocks and realize capital gains, to buy
Mm-hmm.
bonds to rebalance. And you should be doing that. Like if you get out of target and you're bearing too much risk with too much stock, You should be selling some stocks to realize some capital gains, to buy bonds, to rebalance properly. There's a bunch of other reasons why you should be rebalancing, but with fund of funds, is they're going to rebalance within the fund, and when they do that within a mutual fund, there's it moves. The rebalancing happens at a cash level, and so there's capital gains distributions that happens as a result. When they rebalance within the fund, those capital gains are realized in a mutual fund, and they get distributed to all the mutual fund shareholders, the investors. And so you get this, and you don't get to control that, so maybe you're in a high tax year because you just sold in an investment property or something, and you're in a really high tax bracket that year. Or, there could be some other reasons, you cashed out inherited IRA, for example, or something like that. And so maybe you wouldn't want to rebalance your stocks to your bonds that year and wait till next tax year to do it. But if you have a target date fund, and it needs to rebalance, it rebalances, and you can't control that capital gains distribution. So there's a little bit of a lack of control.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. I think that's it for today.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah. So I'll take us out here. We are still, you can call us if you would like to be a client of ours. Kyle can help you. Chelsea can help you. I can help you. We can write you a plan. Kyle can whip your portfolio into shape. If you're not ready for that yet, though, you can ask us a question. You can send us questions to podcast@physicianfamily.com. And if you wanted to sign up, that's at physicianfamily.com as well. You go to Get Started. And if you don't have any questions, you can rate our podcast. We really, really appreciate that. It really helps get the episodes out there and helps your colleagues find us. So until next time, remember, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Are you ready to turn worries about taxes and investing into all the money you need for college and retirement? It's time to make a plan and get on track. To find out if we're a match, visit physicianfamily.com and click Get Started. Or you can ask a question of your own by emailing podcast@physicianfamily.com. See marketing disclosures at physicianfamily.com/disclosures.